Hey there, Internet. Thanks for stopping by. I'm Leebs, and what do you say we look at some gaming news? This week, we got everything from Once Human struggling with success, Space Marine 2 being leaked online in a completely playable state, some big game companies refusing to credit workers for their work, and the Concord beta failing to impress players, as well as much more. Last week, we took a look at the drama surrounding Once Human's terms of service and their baffling decision to give players only one character slot that couldn't be deleted. This week, things have settled down a bit in regards to the TOS drama, with most now realizing it was a big nothing burger. However, NetEase and Starry Studio are still struggling to accommodate the huge influx of interested gamers. After implementing new character limits for servers, players were angered to find that they could not play with their friends due to the new limitations. Or if they were able to make a character, they were faced with long queue times to get into the world. To address the wait times, a patch is scheduled to go live this July 18th, which Starry Studio have said will compensate players who are stuck in queue. Another positive change is the fact that cosmetics you've bought, battle passes, and currencies will now be shared account-wide. If you've already made multiple purchases for whatever reason, you will get a refund or a stipend to make up for the change. One of the biggest points of contention for players, however, is the unusual seasonal wipe system Starry Studio have chosen to go with. While games like Diablo 4 and others do use a seasonal wipe mechanic, this is perceived by most players as normal given the game loops and the way the game was designed. However, for MMOs in the style of Once Human, server wipes aren't the norm, and if you're like me, will completely turn you off from the experience. On top of that, instead of a lengthy 3-month season reset, which Western gamers are pretty used to, Once Human is going with a 6-week reset, which that's not a lot of time. That said, there are mechanics in the game which allow players to retain some of their items from season to season. Frankly, the system has a bit too much to it for this video, but a quick Google search will set you onto the right path. And as with all online games, cheaters are already starting to cause problems for Once Human, and in this regard, Starry Studio is taking the gloves off. While most companies simply announce a ban wave and say something like, "We've banned X accounts for X activity," Starry has taken it a step further and published a somewhat censored list of nicknames, servers they were on, duration of the ban, and the reason for the ban. Exploiters have received a 30-day ban with items obtained by exploits completely wiped out. However, full-on cheaters using third-party programs were banned for nearly 10 years, effectively perma-banning them. Like the first Descendant, Once Human has a hugely interested player base, but also like the first Descendant, the Steam reviews are still sitting at mixed, and I am really interested to see just how both of these games shake out in the long run given their tumultuous launches. We got a number of big announcements this week, starting with the ESRB rating for The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom appearing in the wild. While the E for Everyone rating is hardly surprising, the listing also confirms that Link will in fact be playable. Naturally, there are no details here, but some are already speculating that it may simply be the intro tutorial in which you play as Link, or perhaps some kind of New Game Plus mode. In any case, for those of you hoping to wield the Master Sword once more, it looks like you'll get to in some capacity. Activision announced the Call of Duty Black Ops 6 multiplayer beta dates this week. Those of you who have already pre-ordered, your beta runs from August 30th to September 4th. For everyone else who wants to check it out, you can jump in from September 6th to the 9th. We also got some Warhammer 40k news this week. Owlcat had to disappoint fans when they announced that Rogue Trader's Void Shadows DLC has been delayed for roughly 6 weeks. The reason for the delay, as with most delays, is so the devs can take a bit more time to iron out the kinks. The DLC itself introduces a new playable companion, new story beats that are directly integrated into the main campaign, new crew members, locations, and more. To somewhat soften the blow, fans of the game have been enjoying a very large quality of life update a few weeks back. Fortunately, the delay isn't looking to be too long, so fans can expect to jump back into the Warhammer 40k universe this September 24th, which is around 2 weeks after Space Marine 2 drops. So franchise fans are looking to have a good September. And speaking of Space Marine 2, a fully playable build has somehow leaked online, and Saber Interactive are scrambling to take down uploads. The build of the game that leaked still has some placeholder assets, but is reportedly playable from start to finish with or without co-op. I'm not going to go into any more detail than that, but if you are trying to avoid spoilers, just be aware that the game is in the wild, so you're going to need to be careful. I'm also going to be releasing an Everything We Know style video about Space Marine 2 in a couple days, and no, there will not be any information about the leaked copy, so look out for that if you are interested. No Man's Sky surprised the hell out of players this week with an enormous update that overhauls and implements many new planet-side visuals and features. Thanks to Hello Games' newest project, Light No Fire, some of the planet tech in that game is being implemented into No Man's Sky, and if the early looks are any indicator, the planets look fantastic. The patch is massive, so I definitely recommend checking out the patch notes for full details, but the TLDR version is new planetary biome diversity with accompanying new creatures, including flora-like fauna, lighting changes, overhauled water and clouds which bring proper wave physics and volumetric clouds, solar ship crafting, water landings, discovery renaming, and new hostile creatures. Furthermore, Expedition 14 is launching in the next day or so with a combat-focused outing that's clearly capitalizing on Helldiver's bug-squashing trend. All this sounds great enough, but the update is called World Part 1, meaning there's at least one more update coming to the planetary refresh. Definitely an exciting time for No Man's Sky players. The update is out now for anyone wanting to jump back in and check it out. Hey, so here's an unexpected one. Robot Entertainment is returning to the Orcs Must Die series with Death Trap, a new 4-player co-op game with roguelite elements. Solo players need not be worried though, single player will be available. The game is also planning to have new heroes with unique abilities, an expanded and deeper progression system for both heroes and traps, tighter controlling combat, and of course we'll be getting some improved visuals and physics. As for the roguelite elements, players will be able to choose buffs and debuffs for each run, as well as dealing with environmental conditions which will change on each level, with the developers promising there will no longer be just one ideal wave to solve each map. If you've never played the Orcs Must Die series, at least for my part, I can say it's a pretty fun time. Seeing another one get announced is a pleasant surprise. No release date outside of sometime early next year, but I'm sure we'll learn more in the coming months. A bit of indie drama also happened this week that definitely highlighted the rough state the industry has been in for the past few years. Edgeflow Studio and publisher Hooded Horse announced that Breachway, the deck-building space adventure roguelike, will be coming to early access this August 30th. Originally slated for this July, the developers pushed the date back to give themselves more time to fix bugs, polish current content, and even add some new stuff like persistent battle damage to ships. In Breachway, which is a mashup of FTL and Slay the Spire, you'll command a ship and crew exploring the galaxy in an effort to locate the source of a mysterious signal. Along the way, you'll upgrade your ship, find random events, battle your way out of tight spots, and interact with numerous factions to your benefit and detriment. And I played the hell out of Slay the Spire and FTL, so I'm looking forward to checking out Breachway this August 30th in early access. So where's the drama? Well, earlier this week, Breachway's publisher Hooded Horse responded to criticism surrounding Manor Lords, the popular city builder under their umbrella. Hinterland CEO Raphael van Lyrup, I think is how you pronounce that, took to LinkedIn to criticize Manor Lords, saying the game was a pretty interesting case study in the pitfalls of early access development. Going on to say that the game launched with a pretty strong base game, but without much content. A heavily system-centric game needs either a range of maps, game modes, or some amount of proc-gen dynamism to keep it fresh. Naturally, Tim Bender, CEO of Hooded Horse, wasn't too pleased with the comments and responded. This is exactly the kind of distorted, endless growth, burden of expectations, line must go up perspective that causes so much trouble in the games industry. Manor Lords just sold 250,000 copies in the last month after selling over 2 million copies in its first 3 weeks, and has a very positive review rating of 88% with a median playtime of 8 hours and 48 minutes per player, very long for any game, especially a recently released one. Players are happy, the developer is happy, and we as publishers are thrilled beyond belief. In an interview over at Rock Paper Shotgun, Bender expanded his thoughts on the topic when asked about sustainability in regards to the current dumpster fire that is AAA gaming. Sustainability is something we think about a lot, but we usually think about it in relation to developers, so we're in an interesting situation. We never took money from like venture capitalists or private equity or international conglomerates or anything that would put pressure on us. In fact, we even wrote in our bylaws that we can prioritize other things over profits like artistic integrity and fair treatment. So yeah, consider Hinterland CEO Raphael roundly rebuked and put in his place. And of course, after all the negative press he received for his comments, the Hinterland CEO has since apologized for his not-so-great take. Hooded Horse also announced Whiskerwood this week, which will be a city builder style game with a catch. In Whiskerwood, players will be building up a city for mice who are laboring under the, and I quote, oppressive paw of their cat overlords. Apparently at some point you'll decide if you want to keep the situation as it is or rise up against the cats and fight back. Developer Minetaka Dynamics says the game will have complex simulations and supply chain management dealing with over 40 commodities. You'll also be able to take advantage of vertical city growth, both upwards and downwards. I'm imagining a city with cats and lofty dystopian high-rises while the mice burrow underground, creating a kind of slums. No release date or anything for this one yet, but if you're hoping for another cat game to add to your collection, here you go. Spiders and Nacon announced that Greedfall 2 will be coming to early access soon. The original Greedfall was an ambitious RPG that couldn't quite live up to its goals, but for those who looked past the faults, most agreed a solid experience was there to be had. Evidently, the original's success, despite its problems, was enough to get a sequel greenlit. Or rather, in this case, Greedfall 2 will be a prequel set 3 years before the original. Developer Spiders has said players can expect a deeper experience with new lands, alliances, and more. We'll find out more when the original game launches into early access this September 24th. Meanwhile, Nexon's looter shooter The First Descendant continues to surprise with high player counts, even reaching 10 million players in the first week, according to Nexon. And this is surprising given the negativity surrounding the game. From problems with performance, sound design, predatory monetization, allegedly stolen icon designs, and mixed Steam reviews that aren't budging. It seems the internet is both very pleased and very unhappy at the same time. Regarding the Destiny 2 icon debacle, Nexon have put out a statement this week saying that they'll be addressing the problem, but aside from that, no word on how the designs crept into the game in the first place. To be honest, in my opinion, the aesthetics and design of the game are what's carrying it so hard. It's a pretty cool looking game world, and the character designs definitely resonate with gamers. Plus, when your mechanics are taken directly from Destiny 2 and Warframe, both wildly popular games, it's kinda hard to go wrong. But we will see if those designs can keep The First Descendant afloat long enough to become a lasting hit. In a last bit of First Descendant news, the devs took to Twitter this week to ask players to, pretty please, stop AFK farming the game so much. And yeah, this is what happens when you make your game's grind that brutal. Surprise, surprise, players will find a way to game the system. In this case, players are loading into missions only to AFK and let everyone else do the work. Why exactly players would want to play a game that they're not actually playing is an entirely different story, but hey, this is where the games industry has taken us. We also got a pair of classic revivals announced this week. The Japanese magazine Famitsu revealed that Double Dragon Revive is coming later this year, and as the name implies, it's a revival of the original Double Dragon series. Rather than sticking with its pixel art roots like Arc System Works did with Double Dragon 4 and Secret Base did last year with Double Dragon Gaiden Rise of the Dragons, Revive will move the franchise into the 3D space. That move may aggravate some longtime fans, but Arc System Works was quick to point out that the same simple and intuitive gameplay will remain but be refined for the modern era. We'll all find out if Double Dragon Revive is a return to form or not when the game launches sometime next year. And here's the second resurrection, which I did not have on my radar: Karate Kid Street Rumble. The 80s movie 16-bit side-scroller comes courtesy of Game Mill Entertainment, the publisher behind Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl. According to IGN, Daniel Russo, Mr. Miyagi, Kumiko, and Ali Mills will be playable during the game's 12 stages, with Johnny Lawrence, John Kress, and Terry Silver appearing as enemies. Other than that, info is still pretty sparse, but we'll know more when it's released this September 20th for PC, PlayStation, Xbox, and Switch. Frontier announced Planet Coaster 2, the follow-up to their 2016 hit, that will include water ride attractions, better building and pathing tools, ride customization, 3 core modes, online options like the ability to test others' rides, franchise leaderboards, and shared sandbox levels. No concrete release date outside of sometime this fall, but when it does launch, it will land on PC, PlayStation 5, and the Xbox Series X and S. Fans of the original Zombies mode from Call of Duty may want to check this one out. Hellbreach Vegas is leaving early access soon, sitting at mostly positive over on Steam with nearly 300 reviews. Better yet, the game's currently only $15, has no microtransactions, no battle pass, and all unlocks are earned through gameplay. The 1.0 launch version of the game will ship with multiple game modes, maps, weapons, perks, and enemy types. Also, did I mention it's made by one dev? So if this is your kind of game, be sure to check out the demo. While Once Human may be struggling with early success, Concord is struggling to find its feet in a very competitive genre. Sony and Firewalk Studios tested the water over last weekend, putting Concord out into the wild for its first closed beta test. Right off the bat, things didn't look great when Sony announced at the last minute the beta would be available to all PlayStation Plus members. Since pre-orders were the only way originally to get into the beta, this immediately sent out signals that pre-orders just weren't there. Of course, that's just speculation, but judging from the beta's player count, it's a pretty good guess. On PC, at this time of writing Monday morning, the peak player count was only 1,124 players, and that was only at the beta's start. Currently, only 234 PC players are active, with 507 being the peak players in the past 24 hours. Compare this with Helldivers 2 earlier this year, and it is safe to say PC gamers just aren't interested in Concord at the moment. To make matters even more dire, each pre-order came with 5 friend codes, meaning for every pre-order there could theoretically be 5 extra beta players. So yeah, 1,124 players is likely going to be disappointing to Sony and Firewalk. And seeing as how Sony has made it clear that pushing into the PC market is a big part of their strategy going forward, this one's definitely not going to go over well with the suits. But what of the game itself? Well, Sony extended the beta to cover a bit of Monday, so hopefully that means they're getting good data, but the internet's early thoughts on the game range from mixed to meh. For the positives, it seems Sony's acquisition of Firewalk Studios last year was based on the sheer amount of talent at the studio. Firewalk is full of veteran shooter devs who have experience working on everything from Call of Duty and Destiny to Apex Legends and Mass Effect. And if the early looks at Concord are anything to go by, that pedigree shows in Concord's tight mechanics. If Concord does manage to hold up in the long term, it will very likely be on the back of its veteran design gunplay that will feel familiar in a good way to Halo and Destiny fans. Similarly, the loadouts of the game's heroes, called free gunners, are also receiving praise. Unfortunately, that's where most of the online kudos basically end. Obviously, these are just beta impressions, so take everything for what they are, but the sense online is that the game isn't ready to be released. Most of the criticism I'm seeing is being leveled firstly at the game's $40 price tag. Given just how many great free-to-play shooters there are out there to sink your teeth into, asking gamers to drop $40 up front is already setting yourself a big hurdle. And this is going to make any perceived issues with your game even more poignant. And perceived issues there are. Everything from the game's aesthetics, monetization, map design, and progression are being criticized for being just plain boring and uninspired, which is particularly damning since that's precisely the response Sony and Firewalk received last month during the game's State of Play reveal. The beta weekends were supposed to show us that no, in fact the game is not boring. But unfortunately, as of this writing, the internet just doesn't seem to agree. But if you are enjoying the beta, not all hope is lost. The game does seem to get the gunplay foundation right, which is no mean feat and something Firewalk can absolutely build on. The issue is the game is supposed to be launching August 23rd, just around the corner, and if the early impressions going around are correct, that's not enough time to address player concerns. That said, there will be an open beta starting later this week from July 18th through July 21st, which will add a new map and a game mode, as well as opening the floodgates to everyone who wants to try it out. It could be that the game simply hasn't found its audience, and getting more eyes on it will help. In any case, there's not much more to add. Things unfortunately aren't looking great for Firewalk's hero shooter, but we'll see how it all plays out in the coming weeks. Hey there, past Leebs didn't get to see a handful of new beta reviews which just started to show up. Both Press Start and IGN had positive things to say about the game, with both outlets coming to a similar conclusion that while the game doesn't alter the formula for hero shooters much, if at all, it's still fun, and it has a broader appeal than some of the more complex shooters out on the market. Not a lot to add here, I just wanted to amend this segment to say that there are some folks out there who are enjoying their time with the game. So if you're sitting on the fence, maybe you keep sitting on the fence for a while longer to see how things shake out. Moving right along, let's take a look at some of the games that released this week. Kepler Interactive and A44 Games have launched Flintlock: The Siege of Dawn. Branded as a Souls-Light, players will take control of an elite member of a coalition army in a quest to take revenge against the gods who are apparently hell-bent on wiping out humanity. To aid in your mission, a mysterious fox-like being Inky offers their assistance. With Inky's help, the player will have their combat and world traversal abilities augmented to better make them a match for the task of killing gods. I'm curious to see just how light this Souls-Light is, but if you're watching this video, then Flintlock: The Siege of Dawn is already out for PC, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, and will be coming to Xbox Game Pass on July 18th. We covered Konitsugami Path of the Goddess just a couple weeks ago at Capcom's Next event, and since then, the demo has been out in the wild receiving fairly favorable praise. Players seem to be enjoying the odd mix of action combat and tower defense strategy. Konitsugami takes place on Mount Kafuku as you play as So, a protector of Yoshiro, the Maiden of the Mountain. It's your job to keep the Seethe, the game's enemies, from harming the Maiden as she clears the land of corrupted Torii gates. This one feels a bit like a passion project, and it's definitely different. So if you are looking for something off the beaten track, you may want to give it a look this July 19th, but check out the demo beforehand, of course. Early reviews are pretty positive, so let's hope the game finds its audience. You can pick this one up on PC, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, and Game Pass. This year is shaping up to be amazing for Metroidvania fans, and this week we're getting another one with Gestalt, Steam, and Cinder. From developer Metamorphosis Games, this one has been in development for quite a while, but it looks like it's paying off. In Steam and Cinder, you'll explore a 2D pixel art steampunk world as Althea, an elite merc thrown into a life and death chase to uncover ancient enigmas and save the steam city of Canaan. Obviously, you can expect lots of platforming, exploration, and a mix of ranged and melee combat in Metamorphosis' first outing. Gestalt, Steam, and Cinder should already be available if you're watching this for PC, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, and the Nintendo Switch. Speaking of Metroidvanias, here's another one coming this week. Bo Path of the Teal Lotus is a gorgeous hand-drawn action platformer from new developer Squidchalk Studios to be published by Humble Bundle. Inspired by Japanese folklore, players will journey with, and I quote, Bo, a celestial blossom, descended from the heavens to fulfill a mysterious ancient prophecy. Use your legendary bow staff to bounce and glide fluidly through an otherworldly realm of hand-drawn dreamlike landscapes, strange and adorable yokai, and massive monsters summoned from ancient legends of Japan. While the game does have Metroidvania elements, it seems the core mechanics will revolve around precision platforming, with the ability to brew and drink special teas which unlock transformations for your staff. If you're like me, the art alone already has your attention, and thankfully you'll be able to play it July 17th for the PC, PS5, Xbox Series X and S, and the Nintendo Switch. And if you do like eye-catching art styles, then give Dungeons of Hinterberg a look. The first outing from Microbird Games has you play as Luisa, who is on vacation in the Austrian Alps. While taking a break from studying for law school, Luisa will be hunting down various dungeons in the area to clear them of monsters. Players will be able to snowboard both for traversal and combat actions, utilize melee and magic, explore a beautifully colorful world, solve some really cool looking puzzles that remind me of Monument Valley, as well as engage in some social situations while relaxing at night in between dungeon crawling. Dungeons of Hinterberg launches this July 18th on PC, Xbox Series X and S, and the Xbox Game Pass. Shim is a game about jumping from shadow to shadow while interacting with a relaxing and lively environment. That's taken directly from the Steam page because you don't get much more to the point and concise when describing your game. But just what the hell is a shim? Well, a shim is the soul and spirit of an object, thing, or living being. Everything in the world has one. A shim should never be separated from their thing. This does happen to be your shim. This shim who is attached to a human being is separated from them early on in the game. And there you have it. I love how simple the game sounds, and yet the gameplay looks quite compelling and charming. If you agree, then you'll be able to reunite with your shim this July 18th on PC, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, and the Nintendo Switch. Vampire fans, have you seen Evil v Evil? It's a fast-paced first-person vampire shooter from developer Toadman Interactive. The game has a few different vampire classes which boil down to ninja, tank, or caster essentially, and after picking your poison, you will be shooting and biting your way through a classic arcade-style shooter. I don't know a lot about this one, but I am a vampire enjoyer. If you are too, maybe give this one a look, as it should already be out if you're watching this. Publisher Hooded Horse has even more news this week, as Cataclysmo will be releasing soon. Developer Digital Sun's newest outing is a mix of strategy, base building, and tower defense. After a cataclysmic event called the Cataclysmo, humanity is about to be wiped out by a creeping corruption. It's up to the player to not only build a solid fortress, but also continually defend it from attack to keep the last vestiges of the human race alive. This one's had some early looks, with previewers praising the interplay between strategically building up your base and then defending it from ever-increasing waves of difficult enemies. And since you quite literally build your base one brick at a time, the gameplay loop requires you to think about each brick and how it may impact your long-term strategy. If you're a fan of the genre, you know who you are. Take a look at Cataclysmo in early access this July 22nd on PC. Nobody Wants to Die, the dystopian neo-noir interactive story from Critical Hit Games, launches this week and promises that you'll, and I quote, experience a noir adventure in an alternate future of New York City in 2329. Technology has advanced to offer humans eternal life, allowing consciousness to be stored in memory banks or transferred from one body to another. That is, if you can afford the subscription. Through a series of time manipulation mechanics and advanced tech, players will control Morality Department Detective James Kara on his hunt for a serial killer who targets the city's elite citizens. After a long day when your brain is fried, sometimes jumping into a good narrative adventure is about all you're capable of. If you feel the same, you may want to check Nobody Wants to Die out on PC, PS5, and Xbox Series X and S. In some quick industry news this week, it looks like Nintendo is becoming even more closed off and secretive than ever, with a spat of recent developer and translator miscredits. Last year and earlier this year, Nintendo refused to confirm the developers behind Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, Princess Peach Showtime, and even now we're not sure who's working on the recently announced Mario and Luigi. And this week, a data miner who goes by Yakumano uncovered files in the Nintendo eShop that confirm the World Championship NES Edition is being developed by Indie Zero. This isn't the first time Indie Zero has collabed with Nintendo for a release, so why do they feel the need to keep it under wraps? More on that in a moment. This week, it was also revealed that both Nintendo and Bandai Namco aren't crediting their translators for their work. And these miscredits aren't from little games. Not that that would excuse the behavior. No, when translators aren't credited for work on big games like Tears of the Kingdom, Super Mario RPG, and Animal Crossing New Horizons, I think it's safe to say that's not remotely okay. One source who spoke with GameDeveloper.com said, "I kind of accepted miscrediting as part of the business, but that doesn't mean it's fair or right. The fact that these companies are not able to give any reasonable explanation for omitting external translators and even developers from their credits is proof of this, I think. This poor practice is also being exercised by Bandai Namco, who this week it was reported revised the credits for Elden Ring's Shadow of the Erdtree DLC. While there was an update which added the credits in for European translators, it did not extend the same to its Latin American or Thai translators, opting instead to only represent the translators' companies. If you're wondering why on earth these supergiant corporations can't get it together and properly credit their workers on their games, Eurogamer did a write-up last year where they looked into the issue, and here's the answer that they found in a nutshell. There's a fear that if translators talk to each other and compare rates, they are then able to request better rates, a former Altagram project manager told me. Eurogamer has also agreed to keep the names of those we spoke to for this piece anonymous if requested, due to fears that speaking out will harm their career. There's also a fear that translators will be poached by other LSPs, and both of these concerns are real, they do happen, but for me, there's still not reasons to not credit people for their work. There was a fear of having resources taken away or seen by other agencies who could then recruit them, claimed a second former Altagram project manager. Another fear was translators learning who worked on a project and phoning each other to discuss rates, which is irrational in my opinion, as translators already have ways of discussing these things with each other, forums and other channels. So there you have it, giant companies behaving like giant companies at the expense of their workers who make the money for them. Depressing, if not at all surprising. In other news, UK-based studio Splash Damage, in a statement made to GamesIndustry.biz, announced some potential layoffs coming soon. No word on the number to be laid off, but according to the studio, the layoffs will likely hit the operations side of the business. And yeah, if you take a look at the studio's recent releases, aside from a doomed Google Stadia project, Gears Tactics is the most recent from back in 2020. More news on this as it develops. Last week, I spoke about how Techland, the devs behind Dying Light 2, had reported a $23 million loss for 2023. This week, the company announced that it was going to require remote workers to come into the office or at minimum commit to a hybrid work week. CD Action, a Polish website, reports that this would require workers to be in the office for 8 days out of every 2 weeks. Furthermore, it seems managers were allowed less than 24 hours to get the news out to subordinates. To go further still, CD Action have sources that report Techland's offices aren't even big enough to accommodate the number of workers they're requiring to come in. So why is Techland, who lost $23 million last year, suddenly requiring people to come into the office? We're asking them to come to the office regularly to foster strong connections. And yeah, this is obviously nonsense. I'm sure those of you watching this are thinking the exact same thing I'm thinking. Company reports massive losses, and instead of resorting to layoffs and bad press, they're implementing this policy very aware that some people will either quit or be otherwise unable to conform to this new policy. And that's how you reduce your staff without having to pay severance to your employees. What else do we have here? Another free-to-play shooter dies after just 1 year, and this time it's synced from Tencent. After it launched back in September 2023, the player base rapidly declined as the negative reviews poured in. While no reason was given for the closure, I'd be lying if I said I even remembered this game existed, and I'm assuming I'm not alone. A cursory look into the game reveals excessive crashes, bugs, long queues, mediocre content additions, etc. So yeah, I guess it's not that all surprising. Still, that really sucks if you are one of the remaining fans who did enjoy the game. Moving over to EA, the UK has once again had to put them in timeout for their predatory ad practices. The ad in question was for Golf Clash, and the ASA ruled that the notification informing players that loot boxes were in the game wasn't sufficiently displayed for players to understand. Maybe poor EA will get it right next time. Speaking of our friends across the pond, Game, the UK game retailer, announced that it will no longer be accepting in-store purchases as of August 1st, as well as ending the Game Wallet functionality on August 21st, nor will they be offering top-up cards for digital storefronts like the Nintendo eShop. This somewhat mirrors GameStop's troubles, which have been ongoing for a few years now. It is a hard time to be in the physical games business, and frankly, it's only a matter of time before it will be impossible, at least without a major shift in business strategy. And to wrap up this industry news, Stellar Blade developer ShiftUp finally managed to launch their IPO offering after a false start a few weeks back. And I'd say the suits are probably quite happy with having the second largest South Korean IPO of 2024, bringing in a hefty $320 million. Currently, the company's CEO and founder retains the largest number of shares, with Tencent coming in second. I'm always wary when companies go public, but let's hope the influx of cash can lead to some great games. Fingers crossed. And finally, we're going to wrap up this week's news with two cool mods that caught my eye this week, as well as an Xbox Deadpool crossover that's, well, you'll see in a minute. Firstly, and yes, this is 4 weeks in a row now where Bloodborne gets mentioned. This time, it's thanks to modder Noctis over at Nexus Mods who created Graceborn. While the mod is still a work in progress, Graceborn's goal is to completely overhaul Elden Ring in the style of Bloodborne. As you can see on the screen here, the mod currently has 22 armor sets, 35 weapons, 17 trick weapons, 5 firearms, gun parrying, no equip load, quick steps, permanent night, Bloodborne style healing, and more. I haven't checked this one out yet, but judging from the almost 20,000 downloads it's gotten in the past month, it's safe to say there's some eyes on this one. And this next one is a bit of a throwback. YouTuber Skirty Skirts showed off their RTX remix of the original Splinter Cell Chinese Embassy mission, and it just looks fantastic. Just like the Bloodborne mod though, this one still needs a lot of time in the oven before it's ready, but at least it may give us something to look forward to until the full remake is available one day, if that ever happens. Anyway, links below to both of these creators if you want to check out what they're making. Okay, so this last one is, well, let me just show you. Yep, this is what Microsoft are calling the cheeky controller. And I mean, I don't think I need to explain that. Unfortunately, for those of you foaming at the mouth to get this one, it's a competition-only controller. 18+ fans can enter for a chance to win this thing by following Xbox on Twitter and retweeting the official Xbox sweepstakes tweet. Additionally, on July 22nd, the first 1,000 people to buy an Xbox Elite Wireless Series 2 controller will also get this Deadpool controller holder. And that's not all, because Microsoft are going hard for this Deadpool Wolverine promotional content. There is also a Series X stand and 2 further Deadpool-ass controllers to win. If you're interested in potentially getting your hands on Deadpool's ass, you'll need to head over to Xbox's official site for all the details. Hey there, that's going to wrap up this week's news. As I mentioned earlier, I am working on an Everything We Know video for Space Marine 2 that I should have out sometime in the next couple days for those that are interested. Also, last week we took a look at EA and Microsoft deciding to piss off everyone, so there's that if you're so inclined. I am going to go into log into Final Fantasy XIV now because I made the terrible mistake of reinstalling it. So, as anyways, stay safe out there and I hope you guys have a great weekend. See ya.